So Spiritomb in Pokemon Sword and Shield is really bulky with 108 in both of his defenses. And 50 health, which isn't the greatest, but because your defense is so high, you can take some hits. It also has 92 attack and special attack, which is pretty good for being tanky. Like, you have decent attack stats, so you can actually do something. 35 speed is terrible. Unless you're in Trick Room, then it's actually really good, because then you'll be one of the in a Trick Room, you're one of the fastest things. But its abilities are Pressure and Infiltrator, which it kind of depends on what you're doing. If you're running more of a tanky Spiritomb, then Pressure is really good, because then it take away more PP, and it can be the difference between, especially if they have healing moves, Pressure is actually really good, or in doubles, if they try to do some healing, or they do just moves that have, like, Blizzard, like, high base power, but low PP, you can make use of Pressure. Infiltrator is really good, though, because it ignores substitutes, which is really good on its own, especially if they don't know and they set up a substitute, and you just go through it and KO them. It also ignores Reflect, Light Screen, Safeguard, Mist, and Aurora Veil, which is really good on Spiritomb 2, because your Will-O-Wisp, for example, will go through Safeguard, and you can ignore Aurora Veil, Reflect, and Light Screen. You can ignore all of the moves that lower your damage. But being Ghost and Dark is a really good typing. You're only weak to Fairy, which is really good. You're also immune to normal fighting and Psychic, and you're resistant to Poison. So really, it's a neutral typing overall. Like, as long as you stay away from Fairy, you're fine. But you have 3 immunities. So you have a good amount of things you can switch in and literally take no damage. And then being immune to Poison's good, especially with all the Fairies now. But one way to run Spiritomb is just Nasty Plot under a Trick Room too. You want to do this under a Trick Room, but Nasty Plot, and then Shadow Ball, Dark Pulse for dual stab, and then Psychic as this last move, or you can run Burning Jealousy for the coverage. Actually, if you're running Burning Jealousy is better if you're not under Trick Room, because if you're under Trick Room, then you'll go first, so this won't matter for the most part. But if you're not under Trick Room, this will matter a lot, especially if they're setting up to try to take you out and they're physical, like they Dragon Dance or Swords Dance or something. You can make the most out of it. And for the item, like, I like again Infiltrator 99 times, just because of ignoring Reflect and ignoring Safeguard, Lights. Ignoring this stuff is really good. Moral of the story. But the item is kind of weird, because if you're under Trick Room, then you don't really need the healing. Then you can run something like maybe a Life Orb, but you run the risk of taking yourself out of recoil. Or something like one of the Guava berries is really good. Like, one of the 1/4 berries is also really good on Spiritomb because it's so tanky. But again, the item's up to you. If you're not running Trick Room, then I would run a berry for sure, just so you can heal back after taking a hit from Nasty Plot. Or after you Nasty Plot and do a hit, you can heal up, especially with one of the 1/4 berries. But Life Orb is really good for that extra damage. Even maybe Expert Belt, honestly, just against super effective targets for free damage. But something like that, I wouldn't really use Leftovers because you won't be on the field for that long. Maybe Lumberry too if you're worried about getting burned. Well, actually, Lumberry doesn't matter. You're not gonna get burned. But something like that on those berries. Or if you want to go all in, you could run a. Which one is it? It's not Salac. It's the other berry. It's the berry that raises speed. Oh, I don't know what that berry's called. But if you want to be really, not speed, raises special attack. If you want to be really bold, you can run the. If I don't see it, I'm gonna give up on it in a second, because it's pretty much the special version of the Lychee Berry. It raises your special attack when you're under 1/4. So you can run that instead. This one. You can run this berry too if you're feeling like. Especially, only use this if you have Trick Room though. And you have a lot of turns of Trick Room left. Then you can play around, get the special attack raise, and pretty much KO everything at that point. But again, it's risky. Also, a special wall could come in and become a problem. But another way to use Spiritomb is just make use of that bulk. Also, I think every Spiritomb should have max health because your health is so low. But this is more of a weird, like, this is more of a you embracing your slow and just trying to two-shot everything or take everything out slowly. Payback or Shadow or Sucker Punch. Payback has 100 base power because 9 times out of 10 you'll move after your opponent. Or you can run Sucker Punch here if you want the priority but less damage, because Payback will do 100. Same with Lash Out too. You could also run Lash Out if you want to play that risk of maybe they'll lower your stats and then you get 150 base power. You can play around it like that. Poltergeist is just a really good move, especially if they have an item, so you have to be careful that they don't have either a berry or because a berry could cause a problem if you hit them with this and then they eat the berry, or they have a sash. No, sash doesn't really matter, but just watch out for items. Destiny Bond's always a good option, especially because you can Destiny Bond and then either they attack you and KO or you KO them. You can put them in a situation like that. And this lasts a lot. either Shadow Sneak or Sucker Punch. Like, you want to have priority because you're so slow, but Shadow Sneak does less damage, but it's guaranteed to go. Sucker Punch can kind of be played around if they don't attack you, so you have to be careful of that. And again, Infiltrator. I like the berry for this one because you're going to take hits, so you're going to be low on health. You could also run Assault Vest and drop the Destiny Bond, but I really like having the Destiny Bond. And the healing from the Aguav is really good. Again, it doesn't matter which berry as long as it's the right one. As long as it's not this nature, or the one that screws you over. But another way to run Spiritomb is just going into the full bulk and Disruption. Just Will-O-Wisp, if it hits, was 85 actually is not the best. And Hex is a great one too, because this does 130 base power, plus they're burned. So you can run max health, max special defense, because if once you burn them, they won't have a lot of, their attack gets cut in half pretty much. So you Will-O-Wisp them, Pain Split, gain all your health back, and then take them down with Hex. You also have Dark Pulse for stab, but you can kind of get rid of this. For, like, you only really need Will-O-Wisp, Hex, and Pain Split. You don't have to run Dark Pulse. You can run something like a Psychic or a Psychic. You could run Burning Jealousy if you think they're going to try to set up against you with like a Swords Dance or something to try to get back their health. Actually, it doesn't really matter to run Burning Jealousy. Yeah, I would run either Dark Pulse, or if you just want the fire from Burning Jealousy, or Psychic, just for coverage in that last move. But I like the dual stab because it's going to do more damage, the most damage. But again, pressure, actually, I like pressure on this one. But you can also run Infiltrator because I didn't realize it ignores Safeguard. But also, it's Will-O-Wisp, and Will-O-Wisp doesn't hit their sub, so pressure and Infiltrator might be the moves just to cover yourself, because they could sub thinking you're gonna Will-O-Wisp and be like, oh, I'm not gonna get Will-O-Wisp, and then Infiltrator hits through it. So the other thing about Spiritomb though is you can notice its ability, because if pressure doesn't activate at the beginning of the turn, then you know it has Infiltrator, but that just depends on how well they know Spiritomb. I like Leftovers because you have the Pain Split, so you're going to have a good amount of health, especially against physical attackers that you Will-O-Wisp. So I like the Leftovers of the constant healing after the turn, especially because you want to stay out there pretty long. And if they switch in something that's special maybe and they don't do a ton of damage, or they try to set up, you can just Pain Split and get a ton of health back at the beginning of the turn. But a double Spiritomb is something along the lines of Icy Wind to slow them down, Snarl to lower their special defense, or special attack. Burning Jealousy actually hits both opponents, and it could hit both. If either of them have a stat raise, this will hit both and burn them both, or whichever one has it. Ally Switch is just a really good move in doubles to protect your ally, especially if your ally is the hard hitter and you're more just tanky. And the stats you can run on this one, it just depends on you. Do you want to run max health, max special attack just for the most damage, or do you want to run something that's bulkier defensively, because you have Snarl, which lowers their special defense, right? Special attack, so it makes you better specially. You want to run something like this. It just depends on what you want. Do you want to play around the Burning Jealousy and like Swagger? You could like Swagger Burning Jealousy and an opponent, something like that, to guarantee a burn plus damage. So there's things you can play around it. The nature and the EVs are fully up to you, just depending on how you want to run the Spiritomb and what you want to run next to it. Again, I like the Aguav Berry, especially because it's doubles, and if they hit you with dual hitting moves, you'll survive with a good amount of health. Most of the time, you can get the Aguav Berry because you won't get blown up. As long as you're not getting hit with like one attack that's dual hitting, and then you get hit with like a Moon Blast or something like that. Especially having only one weakness. Spiritomb's pretty good overall with that. But some of the other moves Spiritomb learns is like Nightshade. At level 100, Nightshade's worth it, but if you're level 50, it's not really worth it. Confuse Ray, it has a 33% chance of them hitting themselves in confusion, so you can play around that. I wouldn't really ever use Spite. Memento is also an option, especially in doubles. You'll faint, but you lower their attack and special attack by 2, so you pretty much shut them down. Again, Sucker Punch with any sort of priority is really good because you're so slow at 35 base speed. You're never, unless you're in Trick Room, you're going last, pretty much last. And then the 92 attack with Sucker Punch is actually pretty good. Curse is also an option. I think they take a fourth of their health every turn, but you take half your health and they take a fourth of their health every turn. So it's pretty good like that, just to do constant damage on them. You could also do something with like Hypnosis, Dream Eater, especially in doubles. You could use Hypnosis and then have Dream Eater, or you could just use it for the setup for like one of these ones, something like this. Just Hypnosis and Dream Eater back for some sustain. One of these two, maybe not this. Well, you could do Dream Eater. You could do Hypnosis instead of Will-O-Wisp, just higher risk, and then Dream Eater instead of Dark Pulse. And then you have Healing from Pain Split in case you missed the Hypnosis, and Hex does double damage because they have a status. So you can play around that. Plus Dream Eater Healing use pretty good. Again, Will-O-Wisp. Imprison, Wonder Room, their moves. You're really slow, so Taunt's really not that good. Again, same with Substitute and Endure. You're really slow, so it's like even if you get those up, you're gonna get KO'd the very next chance. Calm. It also does learn Calm Mind if you want to run if you want to run a really bulky Spiritomb. Actually, you could do something along the lines of Will-O-Wisp, Hex, Will-O-Wisp, Hex, Calm Mind, and then like Dark Pulse or something like that. Just Dark Pulse or Pain Split, depending on what you want, because and then you'll be really tanky with max health, max defense. Because if they're physical, you burn them. And then you just set up specially, and you're fine. Pain Split, you get a lot of health back. KO. Next thing that comes in, if it's special, you already built up specially. If it's physical, you take a hit, Will-O-Wisp, play around it like that. So Spiritomb can get really tanky with the Calm Mind. Hex. One thing that does suck about Spiritomb though is it does not learn very many physical moves, like Phantom Force, Foul Play, Retaliate, like that. It doesn't learn very many physical moves at all, which isn't great. And that's why I like Spiritomb. You have Payback. He doesn't learn any special moves or physical moves. Also Psychic, Uproar, decent. Hyper Beam. I think it learns Hyper Beam and Gig Impact, but some of its best moves are egg moves, honestly. Destiny Bond's really good. Disable's also pretty good. Grudge, I think, makes it so if you get KO'd, you take away all the PP of their move. So you can play around that, especially if they're stuck into one move, or like they really only have one move, or if you're really scared of one move, like you have an ally that is weak to a move, and you switch in Spiritomb and Grudge, and they lose that move, you could play around that and that could win you the battle. Especially if all their other moves are resisted, and you grudge the one move that's really a threat to you. Again, Pain Split, it's pretty good. Smoke Screen is whatever. But if you want to Dynamax Spiritomb, maybe better to do it like this. If you want to Dynamax Spiritomb, you could do something along the lines of, I would run Special if you're Dynamaxing it 100% of the time. But because it's physical moves, one, it doesn't learn many, and two, they're not the greatest. But Dream Eater, Dark Paw, Shadow Ball, and then Burning Jealousy. And then just max health, max attack, modest. I would definitely run a Guava Berry though on this one, 100%, because you're gonna drop down to that. You're gonna drop down to that health because you're so bulky. Plus you're Dynamax, so you have twice as much health. So you're gonna drop down, and you only have one weakness to worry about. And plus, when this a berry procs, you're gonna get a lot of health back. But like the physical one, like you have Poltergeist, which has 110 base power, but then after that you have Dark, and that's it. You have probably Sucker Punch or Lash Out. I think Lash Out's its best damage, but then you don't have a third physical set, like unless you want to run normal with a Gig Impact or Rock Tomb. But then you have another move that, unless you want to run the Max Guard, you can do some things like that and delay maybe, but that's how to use Spiritomb and Pokemon Sword and Shield.